We're here at the Idaho State Penitentiary Maximum Security Institute, and in my hands right here are just 50 of over 300 PDF documents released by the Moscow Police Department following Bryan Kohberger's sentencing. They paint an absolutely horrific picture of a crime scene that officers struggled to describe, describing one of the girls found unrecognizable due to her injuries. Page by page, the documents tell a nearly chronological story of the Moscow Police Department's investigation into the murders at the King Road house, from the first steps into the home to the movements of the victims on the night of the murders to the eventual arrests of Bryan Kohberger and beyond. According to the documents, officers that responded to 1122 King Road found distraught friends and roommates outside before entering the home, where what they saw defied explanation. In their reports, officers wrote about blood-soaked sheets, horrific wounds, and pools of blood, finding that by the time police had arrived, the four roommates had been deceased for a while.
It's changed everyone involved. How could it not? It was a devastating tragedy to our community, and our police department is a part of that community, and it was very difficult for us as well.
It also reveals new details of the two surviving roommates, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen. Funk said on the night of the killing, she heard what she thought was a firework and saw a spark on the ground from under her door. She then tried calling her roommates several times. Fellow roommate Dylan Mortensen telling Funk that she saw someone wearing black walking around the house. The reports list specific causes of death for each of the four roommates and noted that the medical examiner found the suspect had used, quote, a lot of force in his attacks. In his first interview with investigators in December of 2022 following his arrest, investigators said Kohberger made small talk with officers, expressing worries about his family and his dog and discussing his interest in criminology. But then the documents say the interview shut down when investigators started asking Kohberger about the Idaho murders. Kohberger admitted to being aware of a murder, but when pressed, asked for a lawyer.
Went into this interview, we used a lot of influence and guidance from the FBI and their behavioral analysis unit to help us a ton in framing our interview strategy, rather. When we spoke to Mr. Kohberger, we kept it pretty surface level to begin with, the idea being get him to speak and keep him speaking. It was pretty surface level, and then when we tried to get into things a bit more detail, he decided to end the interview.
The documents go on to paint the picture that steadily emerged of Bryan Kohberger through interviews after his arrest of both friends and later his fellow inmates. Investigators would learn during his time at Washington State University, Kohberger befriended a fellow teaching assistant in the criminology program. That fellow assistant, known only as L in documents, said he considered Kohberger a friend and described him as, quote, intelligent but also selfish. L said Kohberger would often mislead him around their shared work, often leaving L to do the work assigned to Kohberger. L also claimed Kohberger used his position as a teaching assistant to gain inappropriate influence with female students, and frequently talked about wanting a girlfriend. After the murders, L said Kohberger became more talkative, describing him as someone who, quote, needed to vent. That's also around the time he said he noticed injuries on Kohberger's face and hands, enough to inspire him to ask about the injuries. Kohberger told him he'd been in a car accident. Then, following Kohberger's stay in Latah County Jail, fellow inmates would tell investigators that Bryan Kohberger barely slept, took hour-long showers, and spoke to his mother for hours every day via video call. An inmate housed next to him said Kohberger would obsessively wash his hands dozens of times a day. Bryan Kohberger was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years for burglary. He pled guilty to the murders of Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. At the Idaho State Penitentiary, I'm Dakota Castanets DJ, reporting.